Democratic Republic of Congo have arrested more than 30 people after an attempted coup. The government said up to 60 armed men attacked the president's house on Sunday, killing 7 people. Leader Joseph Kabila wasn't at home and was unhurt. Fighting spread to a nearby army base before the Republican Guard put down that attack. A Danish boat carrying a family of 5 as well as 2 crew members has been seized by pirates in the Indian Ocean. The boat is reportedly heading to Somalia. The family includes 3 children between the ages of 12 and 16. 4 Americans were killed by pirates. That was last week after their yacht was hijacked. A British security officer found guilty of shooting dead 2 colleagues has started a life sentence in Iraq after escaping the death penalty. Danny Fitzsimmons is the first Westerner convicted by an Iraqi court since the 2003 U.S.-led invasion. And he said he shot the men in 2009 as an act of self-defense. Well, 2 American security guards accused of killing 2 Afghan civilians are back on trial in the U.S. The men worked in Afghanistan for a division of the company that was formerly known as Blackwater. They were tried last year, but the jury couldn't reach a verdict at the time. Tom Ackerman reports.
Christopher Drotleff and Justin Cannon were hired by Paravant, a shell business for the company formerly known as Blackwater. Their job helping to train Afghan soldiers. That was until May 2009, when an incident left 2 Afghans dead and the contractors fled the country. The 2 Americans say they fired their weapons in self-defense at the Afghans riding in a car which rammed their convoy and then tried to run them over. An Afghan pedestrian was also hit at close range and was among the dead. Prosecutors say the Afghans' car was never a threat, and a U.S. Army review found that the 2 Americans had been drinking that night and violated weapons policies. The incident was not the first involving questionable weapons use by Paravant Blackwater employees in Afghanistan. Official U.S. reviews have accused other company personnel of unauthorized possession and reckless use of Afghan military weapons. The chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee said Blackwater was actually damaging, not helping the Afghan training mission.
And if we fail to make sure that contractors like Blackwater play by the rules and live up to their commitments, we'll be doing a disservice to our troops by making their already difficult and dangerous job even more so.
Levin has urged the Defense Department to reconsider its award of a potential $1 billion contract to Blackwater for training Afghan soldiers. But both the State Department and CIA last year awarded Blackwater and its shell companies new contracts to guard their facilities in Afghanistan and elsewhere. Afghan President Hamid Karzai has set a 2-year deadline for all foreign security contractors to leave his country. The retrial of the Afghan shooting case follows a U.S. judge's dismissal of manslaughter charges against other Blackwater security guards working for the State Department in Iraq. Investigators found that in 2007, they killed 14 unarmed civilians without provocation, but the judge ruled that the evidence was inadmissible. Tom Ackerman, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Well, the people of New Zealand have fallen silent to remember the hundreds killed in last week's earthquake. Veronica Petrosa reports.
A Maori elder calls to welcome the living and mourn the dead. The Prime Minister and top officials bow their heads. Bricks from the ruins of Christchurch symbolise the devastation around them. And New Zealand stopped, a week to the minute since a powerful earthquake. Emergency crews from around the world too silenced their jackhammers. They joined millions of New Zealanders in sombre tribute. 2 minutes of silence to remember the dead and missing. Prime Minister John Keyes called it one of New Zealand's darkest days. The official death toll is still rising.
The number is fluctuating, but the figure that you've quoted of around 240 is solidifying.
A major inquiry has been promised to find out why so many buildings collapsed in Christchurch, a city that was supposed to be quake-proof. The finance ministers warned the earthquake's likely to wipe out any growth in New Zealand's already struggling economy. As if things weren't bad enough, Christchurch is still experiencing violent aftershocks, opening cracks in the ground, threatening to cause landslides and rattling residents' already frayed nerves. Veronica Pedrosa, Al Jazeera.
A reminder, you can keep up to date with all the news on our website, aljazeera.net/English. We're back in a moment.
taken stolen goods, and he's now dumping them onto the world without any sort of consideration for consequences.
From people making the news.
If the North will be saved a lot of trouble, I think it is important that they should come together.
To those it affects.
We do accept that there was very bad mistakes made in our banking area.
Behind the headlines.
Most South Koreans are not interested in reunification.
Is the inside story. At this time on Al Jazeera.
As protests, violence, and the call for political reform spreads across the Arab world, Al Jazeera's in-depth coverage of events on the ground brings you the news as it breaks. Ongoing coverage of the Libya uprising on Al Jazeera.
It is in the details. A look. A connection. The moments that reveal the truth. Award-winning documentaries from critically acclaimed filmmakers. Witness documentaries to open your eyes. At this time on Al Jazeera.
The relocation of the Ahmadiyya has magnified the issue of religious intolerance in Indonesia. Is this inevitable in a multicultural society? And is the government turning a blind eye?
101 East at this time on Al Jazeera.
Al Jazeera is journalism without frontiers.
Police are pushing the protesters and the media back off of the street.
From the mainstream.
Who will pay the ultimate price for this disaster?
To the unreported world.
Taking the less traveled path often gives you a fresh perspective.
Breaking the boundaries.
This is almost certainly the largest leak of military information in history.
Cutting through the hype.
You can see the angry exchanges outside the Ministry of Transport.
Al Jazeera is setting the news agenda.
Gaddafi's forces fight back in Libya. Air Force jets bomb a rebel-held ammunition dump east of Tripoli. The opposition have dismissed the attacks as an act of desperation. I'm Darine Abu Gaida. This is Al Jazeera live from Doha. Also coming up on the program, forces opposed to Gaddafi plan their own offensive on Tripoli, but are the aging weapons they have up to the job? The Libyan leader laughs off calls for him to quit, saying he'll never leave his homeland. And mourning the dead, New Zealand marks a week since the earthquake that rocked the city of Christchurch. Well, forces loyal to Muammar Gaddafi have attacked targets across Libya overnight, but the strikes appear to have had little effect on the morale or the determination of those who want to see the Libyan leader forced out.